Hey, friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome to our March retro review, or our third retro review. This might go up in April, I don't know. Our third retro review of 2023 as voted on by our patrons at $5 and up, patreon.com/Stephen Larson. And our YouTube channel members. We are going to be talking about NXT, the debut episode from Full Sail. When I say debut, I mean NXT the way we know it now. It's as a developmental territory. So the exact date of the broadcast was June 20th, 2012. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, June 20th, 2012. Season 6, episode 1. So the first 5 seasons were when NXT was the game show. So they would take rookies from, I guess, FCU or other developmental territories, pair them with a main roster vet, and they'd have a competition, and then someone would win.
And then I think there was like kind of an in-between phase when it was kind of like main event, how they do main event now, where they had like storylines. I think they by and large dropped the game show aspect of it, but it wasn't shot in its own place. It was shot like before, as like dark matches. They were shot there. And so like once they got to Full Sail, there were still remnants that were sort of running into this stuff. Like, what's his face? EC3. He was Derek Bateman.
Derek Bateman. Yeah.
And Fandango, then Johnny Curtis. They had like a little sort of, I don't know, it almost seemed like out of context.
It really did.
Segment here where they were going to be like next week's main event. But there were a lot of introductions in this episode. But then there was a little bit of spillover from what was going on before. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. What's kind of interesting to me, and I don't know why I find this stuff so fascinating, reading up on it when it came to, because I know we had both, even though maybe we'll still do a review on it just for shits and giggles, because I know we've both actually researched it, the first Monday Night Raw. It keeps on losing in the fan vote, but whatever. The TV history of WWE is kind of fascinating to me. And so this was kind of interesting as well, because there seemed to be some hemming and hawing from WWE about where to do this. So as you probably know, what preceded this really was FCW. That was their actual developmental territory, as you will. And that ran locally in Florida on TV. I think it was probably on what's called the Bright House networks. I did a little bit of research. I read some Wrestling Observer, and this is what Dave had to say about all that. He said, as far as what happens to these tapes, meaning the tapes of the tapings from the first batch of NXT episodes, as of the last we've heard, they're all internationally in the NXT slot and locally on Bright House in Florida. Only a few days earlier, they had announced the new NXT would air on WWE.com, with the tapings being done either starting this week, or they would start with the last set of 4 shows taped starting on June 20th on the site. Keep in mind, this was after word had been given that they didn't want the shows on the website for a variety of reasons. The whole not exposing developmental talent until ready argument, and the idea that if you become internet television, it becomes almost impossible to sell the show down the line, because why would a TV station want to pay money for something you've shown as a company you're giving away for free? Plus has the tag of an internet TV show and not a real TV show. So after making the announcement, the Florida version would start on the website on June 20th. The day before, WWE removed all links for the NXT show on its website, which would seem to indicate they changed their minds again. It's the deal where they feel if they make it a website show, it devalues the show, and I'm presuming the idea is to roll it out when the network gets going. Now, I think the WWE network didn't start until 2014, so that's like 2 years after this. He continues on. At least until they change their minds again next week. I'm glad it's only in Florida at this point. And here's Dave with his own editorializing, because the idea of debuting Richie Steamboat, who clearly was supposed to be a big deal, as just an enhancement guy for Jinder Mahal, and debuting Bo Dallas, and Rollins with losses just boggles the mind. Still, these shows are going to air internationally. It's hard enough to create new stars as it is, but debuting guys on TV before they have names in jobber roles is insane if you think there's any potential in them, and all three have potential. Beating them in situations to start programs once they're established as winners is something different, and this really all is a test run since nobody's going to see these shows in the US. And I do remember back then thinking like, how can I, because I sort of heard about NXT a little bit, and I was like, oh, we knew about the game show and everything, but when it turned into its own developmental territory, I remember thinking, where can I watch this? And then not knowing like, okay, does WWE.com carry this or what? So it seemed like back then even there was some hemming and hawing as to like, should we run these shows or not? And it seemed like maybe some of Vince's old media strategy was maybe conflicting with the way things would eventually go.
Yeah, exactly. I want to drop this in here. You mentioned FCW. This is all about the early days of NXT. Steve was on vacation a few years ago. Cal and I did a couple shows about his experiences in the early days of NXT. If you've not watched those, definitely check those out. Fascinating insight from Cal, who was in the program in the early days. He went out there when it was still FCW, went on to NXT.
Do you remember, was he on any episodes of FCW TV? Do you know, did he mention that?
I don't recall, though.
Okay. All right. I'll have to look at some of those. I know we looked at one of them on SmackDown, I think.
Yeah. There's a triple threat from FCW between Ambrose, Rollins, and Roman Reigns that I've saw on internet. There's those matches do exist out there. If you can find some of them. What's interesting about NXT as it existed here in mid 2012 is how, in a lot of ways, is echoing what we saw with the birth of 2.0.
Sure.
It seemed pretty obvious with this iteration of NXT that they were focusing on character in a lot of ways. You have the Ascension, this, like the production they threw into them as a tag team with the CG cityscape, even though it looked like a PlayStation 2 game. They were kind of hovering over, dropping their promo.
Hey, I'll say this. You're absolutely right about the cityscape. The green screen they did with them like perched up above the city.
Yeah. That was solid.
I thought that was kind of cool. And their music was kind of cool.
Yeah, their entrance was great. I mean,
yeah, it really was. It's fun to laugh at, but honestly, why didn't these guys debut on main roster? Like, this was a main roster fucking entrance that the Ascension had.
You had video packages for Bo Dallas that was focused on character. Seth Rollins. I mean, their promos were all pretty generic, even though it was funny that Seth was talking his promo about not being generic. I was like, okay, this is kind of generic babyface stuff you're doing here. So.
Yeah.
But these are guys in Bo and Seth. I know Seth had a lot of experience in Ring of Honor. He's a former Ring of Honor champion, but he's talked about how the character aspect of wrestling wasn't something he focused on until he got to WWE. You know?
Yeah.
And so you this is early NXT. I know they're both in FCW, but they're still learning the process of developing character and then delivering promos using that character's voice.
Yeah, right.
And having them be unique and genuine. And that's not an easy thing to do. You can go to wrestling school and learn the fundamentals of pro wrestling and how to tell a story in the ring. But I don't know, and I'm sure you could take acting classes too. But it feels, like to get the physical aspect of pro wrestling so a second nature, it takes repetition.
Yeah, right.
And it's the same with promos. You just got to do it and do it and do it and do it and do it until you feel comfortable, and then you find the character and then you can channel that character, and that takes time.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And there's that pretty famous promo of Baron Corbin, "Give me a shot.
Give me a shot."
And it's hilarious and it's not very good. And we saw him develop in NXT when he was the worst crap talker in ring. You're not me.
Yeah, you're not. Hey.
Now he's a good talker.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It just so a lot of instances. It just takes time. Very few people get in the world of professional wrestling and they're like, bang, great on the mic instantly. It happens, but it's not. It's fairly rare.
It's funny. You can even watch like Kurt Angle when he did that like one NWA show, and he does like I think it was like an interview afterwards, and it's nowhere near what he was. And granted, he is an outlier. Like not a lot of Kurt Angles, but once he came in and they found, okay, you're going to be a dick. You're going to do the intensity, intelligence, integrity thing, but you're going to be an arrogant prick about it. You're going to be condescending. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. We get it.
Yeah. But you got Bray Wyatt, who has a little quick video package in here. And The timbre of his voice is different. The delivery is a little different, but the essence is there.
Oh, it's brilliant. It is. Yeah. It's fantastic. Honestly, he's not too different from where he is now.
No. His voice isn't quite as gruff.
Yeah.
And the cadence of his speech is a little different, but it's mostly there. Yeah,
it is. But here's the thing about it: was like maybe 2 minutes. I think it was like a 1 minute video package.
Really short, yeah.
It told you immediately who he was. Mm-hmm. You understood immediately what this guy was, and it was. Yeah, I was really impressed by that. Yeah, so here's a couple before we dive into the actual review. Here's a couple of fun notes about, again, from the Observer, about various people who are, making their debuts in NXT around that time. He mentions it's notable because, obviously Dean Ambrose had that big thing with Foley preceding this, and they had basically dropped it at this point. I think he went on to do a thing with, actually that might have preceded that. I think his thing with Regal was in FCW.
It was, yeah.
He says it's notable that there was no Dean Ambrose, no Big E Langston, and no Cassius Ohno, among others, on the taping. I would guess that's because those three would be brought to the main roster sooner. Langston is different, but I'm not sure he's ready, though he may be as ready as he's going to be. He's a shorter and more athletic version of the Mason Ryan Jackson. Who's he talking about? Jackson. I don't know who he's talking about. Type of wrestler that Vince gets fascinated with for a few weeks and then drops, but he's not ready at this point. Ambrose and Ono are ready right now. And one thing that he mentions also is that Meltzer and seemingly WWE or NXT at the time was really high on Rick Victor of all people. Meltzer mentions him at one point like he had won the FCW. He beat Seth Rollins for the FCW title, lost it to Bo Dallas. He mentions, here we go. Dalton, Mike Dalton.
Tyler
Breeze has a good look. A protege of Lance Storm. Lee Key, Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
On the surface, embodies almost everything they want a developmental talent to be. He's got the size, the body, the look. Unfortunately, it's the same look like half a dozen guys in FCW had, although a lot of those guys are changing their looks now. Is very athletic for his size, has the family background, real credentials, and has at least a degree of natural charisma. Whether that charisma can translate to WWE, that's a different world, and I have no idea what level of talker he is. But as far as what they scout for, he's almost the prototype. It's kind of fun to hear Dave's thoughts on stuff.
Yeah.
On Roman Reigns.
And it was a matter
Ezekiel,
of months
maybe
later.
he's talking about Ezekiel Jackson. That's what we're talking about.
And what, about 5 months later, Leaky, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, of course, would debut on the main roster as The Shield.
It was that quickly. Yeah.
It was Roman. Roman got his name change prior to that. And they kind of did moonlight on main roster at NXT for a short little spell. Not very long, but I don't believe Ambrose or Reigns was on NXT a whole lot.
I know Reigns wasn't. Ambrose did not have very many. I don't think he was on there very often either. I remember seeing them like during a contract signing with two other people, but yeah, they weren't on there very often. Rollins obviously was like their first champion.
First champ, yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, let's go ahead and dive into the actual actual review. Did you write? I have notes here if you want.
Yeah, I have some notes too. Like
you got your own. Okay, cool.
Yeah, with like a video package that shows a bunch of WWE legends. Like I think Undertaker's in there, Hogan, Shawn Michaels. And it says many of us dream to follow in their footsteps. There are few who dare, and even fewer who succeed.
Yeah, it's like that same voiceover guy who did all their stuff back then. You don't really hear him anymore. I do appreciate that, like one of the lines there towards the finish, and who have the audacity to be WWE stars.
You could tell that Vince wrote this.
I'm like, I don't think Vince knows really the correct usage of audacity, but okay.
Yeah.
So anyways, the intro itself was interesting. That dun 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 dun. Dun. Yeah. Decent enough song. And what I like from the intro is they can sort of gather who they had plans for. And the very first guy you see is Richie Steamboat, a real good looking guy, obviously the son of Ricky Steamboat. Mm-hmm. And from what I understand, if I'm not mistaken, I forgot, I looked all this stuff up ages ago. It was an injury thing. Like he either got concussed or he had a neck injury or something like that. where he just stopped. He just dropped out of NXT. So yeah, him, CJ Parker was in the intro. Seth was in the intro. Bo Dallas was heavy in the intro. Big E, Summer Rae was in the intro. Shaul Guerrero was in the intro. I guess Dave Meltzer was really high on her. So Corey Graves was in the intro. There was a dude in a denim jacket I didn't recognize. And I know I've looked him up before, but I forget what his name is. And he just sort of disappeared at a certain point as well. But Johnny Curtis, EC3, Xavier Woods, they were all in the intros.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's kind of fun to see, okay, these are the ones that they're going to focus on. Cassius Ohno, these are the ones that they're going to focus on. And then to go back and see who actually did progress from that, because of, it was a fairly short amount of time, I think. It's not like Richie Steamboat was there for a very long time.
Yeah.
I think he was there for a pretty short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, Seth wasn't there for long either.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right.
And it was sometime around this point that Bo Dallas must have had that spot in the Royal Rumble.
I was thinking that too. Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Where he had that little short feud with Wade Barrett afterwards. Yeah. It might have been the following Rumble in 2013, for all I know. I don't remember exactly.
So it looks like Steamboat was only there until, let's see, he had a match in November of 2012, and then that was the end. He had a back injury, and then in April 2015, his dad said that due to injury and subsequent surgery, he wouldn't be able to wrestle again. So yeah, he had an injury so bad he couldn't wrestle anymore. So
that's a bummer.
So yeah, kind of interesting stuff. So yeah, after the lively intro where everybody sort of was looking at the camera going,
yeah,
that kind of shit. Yeah. We were introduced to the Full Sail crowd there. There's one person with a Reddit squared circle sign, and there's another person with some sort of Alberto Del Rio sign. I didn't see what the rest of it said, but he would not. Del Rio would not. He was not a main roster talent that would make an appearance.
No.
In NXT here, we did get a couple of those, but no Del Rio.
Nope.
Oh man, JR, good old JR, Oklahoma. Oh man, comes out. He's just there to introduce Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so Dusty come out, baby. I'm so excited here, and hopefully, because he's announced as the interim general manager. Oh man, no, but hopefully nobody test me, baby. Nobody test me as interim general manager, because I'm not gonna take it. Then we get a Bo Dallas video package. He talks about being a third generation star. We talked about this the other day, and I forgot. Yes. Blackjack Mulligan.
Yes, I forgot that.
The grandfather.
Yep, I forgot that as well. Yeah, this is pretty standard wrestling babyface stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing
very standard babyface.
Yes, very standard. Nothing outside the norm. But then we go to his match. He has the opening bout against Rick Victor, who you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Of course, he would later be victor of the Ascension. But at this point, Tom Latimer.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
was Connor's partner in the Ascension. Actually, the Ascension, I looked into it, had its origins dating back to FCW when Ricardo Rodriguez started the faction.
Fucking what?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah, with Tom Latimer, with Connor, Shaul Guerrero was a member, and then Epico was a member as well.
That sounds like it could have been cool.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, obviously, in my head, Ricardo is still the ring announcer, but I'm guessing that wasn't his deal.
I don't know if that was his deal in FCW or not.
That'd be
like in 2010
weird.
Or something like that.
Yeah, he was a wrestler though. Like he would also wrestle. I think wasn't he like Cal's roommate or something like that, or Alberto was, or something weird like
something
that.
Like that. So we got JR and William Regal on commentary, and one thing. There's two things that stood out from what commentary said during this match. Regal mentions that Victor was one of the last students of the Heart Dungeon.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then commentary keeps talking about how Bo is very charismatic, but also he's got a really bad temper.
If that's true, I didn't see it.
And then Regal uses this as an example. He says, yes, he split his kidney in a match last year, but now he's healed up and in NXT.
That sounds like something Regal did in his early days.
I know. I think how do you split your kidney?
I don't even want to know. I don't want to know. What did you think of commentary without like a proper play-by-play guy? I mean, JR was there, but JR, even at that point, was more color commentary than play-by-play.
Yeah, I know. It was weird to not have someone just kind of like call out the moves and basic story of the match, and then have someone else comment on that. Yeah, it was. I was looking to see what the because we started watching in 2014 once Finn and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn were all already there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
And between this episode and that, the commentary team had a ton of turnover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
a ton.
Yeah.
So I mean, I barely remember Rich Brennan on commentary, but he was doing it in 2014 when we started watching.
Yeah, I barely remember that. Yeah.
But anyways, Bo wins this with a power slam, follows with spear, and afterwards he's interviewed by Ryan Nemeth, who's now in AEW.
Oh, that's who that was. Yeah. Oh shit! I did not. I was like, that guy looks super familiar.
Yeah, Briley Pierce, I think was his name.
Yeah. Oh, that's the Hollywood hunk.
Yep.
Oh, man. Okay. All right. That makes sense.
And so Bo says, I came to NXT with a game plan. You saw that game plan executed. It's just beginning. I want everyone backstage watching. Keep watching. Because you will know Bo.
Oh, man. Sounds like Bo knows. Immediately, they're just doing trademark infringement.
I know.
I do love that NXT had a winded promo. That made me happy. I came here with a game plan, and I executed the game plan. And oh god, Bo leave. Yeah,
I know it was a little while till they got to the Bo leave gimmick.
Yeah, I think they realized that he wasn't going to work out as just a straight up baby face, and so they turned him into a asshole motivational speaker.
Yeah.
With diapers. After that, we had a Seth Rollins video package. I know that it was fairly generic babyface stuff, but at least he tried to get a little poetic with his language.
Yeah.
Like, I wrote down some lines here. He says,
Same.
He's very serious. Everyone is lost, waiting on a second wind, and I'm the change you're waiting for. I've always believed that every moment was a chance waiting to be taken. We are the authors, the finishers of our fate. We are the solution. And then I couldn't catch this last line. I swear he said, and time's move is now. He
says the time to move is now.
Oh, the time to move is now. That makes more sense. Okay.
Yeah. Part of it is for promos back then, they just had like a curtain. Mm-hmm. They threw some light up on.
It was Ring of Honor. It was just, it was just Ring of Honor style. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it was like a very low budget backdrop for promos. And obviously they weren't pumping a bunch of money into this thing yet.
Right, yeah.
And so it just looked very basic, and like Bray stood out not only because of his performance of the promo, because it was shot like we would eventually see the Wyatt promo shot when he got to the main roster. It looked basically the exact same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Yeah. No, Tyler, he just came off as very, I don't know if the proper word would be emo or what. Yeah. But, very much a product of...
like he went through the lyric book of My Chemical Romance.
That's exactly... Yeah, I was trying to think of a musical reference.
Took the best lines and just wrote them all down. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was trying to see who did his Ring of Honor theme song. It's got to be one of those bands,
Yeah.
Anyways, after that, we had a Cesaro video package. Now, he had already been on main roster for a little while, but I guess he was coming back down to NXT for a slight repackage. I guess he was going to be a little less horny because on main roster he had Oksana,
yeah.
And then when he came back from NXT, he was no longer horny Cesaro.
Yeah,
he was all business. Oh man,
because it was probably the Raw after Mania or somewhere around that point after in 2011 that he debuted on the main roster. I remember watching when he debuted.
Yeah. And then we had what was supposed to be, this is pretty clever. It was supposed to be Jason Jordan versus Damian Sandow. Again, Damian Sandow had already been on main roster, and I think he just showed up in NXT for a short period of time, because I think when I looked at his Wikipedia entry, it looked like he was doing like double duty, not in NXT very much, but I guess they wanted to load up with some main roster stars. And he comes out, he drops his standard intellectual savior promo type thing. He says, and the crowd is whatting the shit out of him. I mean, it's full what action here.
He just goes, silence, please.
Yeah, silence, please. And he basically says Jason Jordan, his opponent, was not, did you write the?
I did. He says, allow me to beg your indulgence for one moment. I'm here to help all of you as WWE's intellectual savior of the masses. I thought it'd be befitting good form to come out and address you all personally. However, it's extremely bad form that I am pitted against an unworthy opponent.
Yeah.
If I am truly to be an example of all that is right with humanity, I cannot and will not engage with this ignoramus this evening. As always, I do this for the benefit and welfare of you all. You're welcome. And so he's on the apron delivering this promo. He steps off the apron, walks back up the ramp. No match.
Yeah, no match happens. So Jason Jordan is denied a NXT debut match.
Yes.
After that, we had a video package for the Ascension where they do like you said, it starts off, it's sort of like, flashing in and out, fading in and out rather from black. And it's like a drone, like what would be like a drone shot today, but it's all CG over a cityscape. And the city is not terribly impressive looking. No. But they sort of flash in and out of it enough so that back then on a like a regular TV, maybe it'd pass.
If you're watching on .com and you're at 480p or something like that, it might look all right.
It probably looks great. However, I will say this though, I mentioned this earlier. It cuts to them and it's all very Dark City-ish. It's very like blue hued, very gothy, very dark, very The Crow. And they are seemingly perched on like some sort of construction framework of some sort.
Yeah, it's like a skyscraper that's being built that hasn't been finished yet. So you just have the steel framework of it. Yeah.
But then like under them and in the distance, you've got like a cityscape in the distance. And it's pretty well done. It's like they have their own version of the volume from the Star Wars stuff, the giant LED screen thing.
Yeah. So are they supposed to be vampires?
I gather that they're supposed to be like vampire werewolves, perhaps, like some sort of one or the other. I gathered more maybe I don't know. Because they had some sort of supernatural eye powers going on with like some eye beams and shit.
Yeah.
And at one point, Victor is laughing and then he goes,
yeah.
There's a lot of like going like very snapping into like a feral state.
Yeah.
It's like,
But that could be, if anybody's familiar with what we do in the shadows, that doesn't necessarily preclude them from being vampires either, though.
That's absolutely true. That is true.
Maybe they were in the tutelage of the Baron.
You know what Juice Robinson should have done? The Baron. You know what somebody should have done? They should have thrown like a bone or a ball and see if they went to chase it. Then you'd know if they're a werewolf.
Werewolves for sure, yes.
But so anyways, they got this silly thing and Victor's like, we are the gateways to the future and we will rise. And then what's his face? Latimer says something as well.
Yeah. Then we get the Raw rebound. So recap of what happened on Raw. This is the Johnny Ace is doing a promo. Cena's got him on his shoulders, ready to drop him with an AA. Vince fires him. And then I guess the following week, he's back somehow talking about that. And he said, before I was fired, I signed this handicap tag match where Cena's going to take on Big Show, David Otunga, and himself, Johnny Ace.
Yeah.
And so Big Show comes to the ring and says, I'm happy I have my ironclad contract, but because of that, I'm not beholden to you, Johnny Ace. I'm out of here. And so the match begins. At one point, Johnny Ace gets in the ring, and it's all because he's got like a crutch and he's got his arm in a sling or something. He takes all that off. He's not hurt at all. And Otunga's like, what the shit?
Yeah.
You're not hurt? He walks out on Johnny Ace, too.
Yeah. I feel like we can, like, looking back on Johnny Ace, obviously he seems like a scumbag, but like we were fairly entertained by the people power stuff. He was tongue in cheek enough. He was sort of self-aware enough. Seemingly.
Some of the people power stuff was kind of clever, but a lot of it just went on way too long.
Yeah, that's for sure. It went on way too long, and it was just unimportant bullshit comedy filler.
Yeah.
Then we had the match, The Ascension versus Mike Dalton, who is Tyler Breeze, and CJ Parker, of course, Juice Robinson. My favorite part about The Ascension, which, by the way, like I said, this feels like a main roster level entrance, but they did carry flashlights with them that they would shine on their own faces.
In the year 2000.
Yeah, they'd be doing this and like.
But it was kind of cool. They'd have shots of them actually walking down the ramp, and then they'd cut to B-roll of them
doing
stuff. But it's all real quick.
They'd like do like a fast motion of their head, like head banging.
Yeah.
Like that, yeah.
But then there's some strobe lights in there, like from a production standpoint, it looked really.
It looked great. The music was really cool too. Their theme song was really neat.
Yeah, it's pretty solid.
No, I thought it was good. I thought it looked. I'll be honest. I think that like the Full Sail thing undersold. It was like underwhelmed because it was Full Sail. But if you do this in a big arena, this would probably be killer.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. But then by the time they got to main roster and did that shit, they had changed everything. They were
everything. I didn't think they had the same theme song, did they? Definitely different.
No, everything was. They were post-apocalyptic guys.
Yeah, Tom Latimer was out.
Yeah, one half of the Ascension
Victor
were different.
was in instead.
Mm-hmm.
So the Ascension wins this match pretty easily, even though they have a lame finish. It's a jawbreaker into like a flapjack pancake type thing. That was it. It's like two really standard moves.
Downcast.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a decent. That sounds like a band that Seth Rollins probably listened to.
Yes, it does. You're absolutely right.
But in terms of just combining two rather mundane wrestling moves to create a finisher,
Yeah, I could. Yeah, I feel you on that one. They call this one the Downcast. Oh man. Also of note with the Ascension, why did Connor like shave his head at any point? He had an amazing head of hair.
I know.
He was fit as fuck too. This dude was in great shape.
Yeah.
And he had a luscious head of hair.
He did. He had really good hair, like Karrion Kross. Great.
Yeah, I know. Hair. Whoever told Connor to like shave a mohawk or whatever, don't ever do that.
I guess that was the post-apocalyptic thing. They thought it fit into that.
I wonder if he does the thing now. If it's like now because he still has like the mohawk thing. I wonder if it was like the Seinfeld guy where he had a great head of hair. He started shaving it and then he tried to grow back and it couldn't grow back.
Oh, it could be.
Oof.
Could be.
Got to appreciate what you have while you have it. Speaking of which, Bray Wyatt. So yeah, it's the sort of Bayou vignette. A bunch of like looks like Texas Chainsaw type sort of cinematography here. And he was clearly a cult leader, you know. And I love the words of this promo. He says, "Good things come to those who believe in Bray Wyatt. Stop lying to your children and telling them monsters aren't real. Monsters are real. They should be looking under the beds at night. Monsters are real. I'm real." And it was just this really, it was all sort of like melodic, and it was, I don't know.
It had his theme.
It had his theme in it already. The song was still amazing. Yeah.
It was all there.
It was good. And it was, dude, here's the thing. It's simple. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if Bray Wyatt these days just needs to go back to some simplicity.
Could be. He's really into the duality of man thing right now, because that's what, Firefly Funhouse and Fiend, that was part of that, and seemingly Bray Wyatt, Uncle Howdy, that's in play there or something.
Yeah.
He likes alter egos now,
He does. He it's funny because now that he's been in in the WWE for whatever, 11
more than
years.
A decade,
Yeah. I wonder if that aspect of pro wrestling is particularly interesting to him.
Could be.
Because he's enmeshed it. I mean, you hear about Ric Flair, probably the biggest case of a guy who didn't even want to be his real self because he loved Ric Flair so much he didn't want to be Richard Fleer. And I wonder if that aspect of it is just he feels like there's a lot of ground that he can cover.
Oh, that could be.
And then he tries, and then we get pitch black Mountain Dew matches.
Yeah. Next, this bit was, it seemed like we were in the middle of a story, but also was really fascinating. So you have EC3, Derek Bateman.
Yeah.
Tons of hair.
Lots of hair.
Lots of hair. So he's wandering around looking for Johnny Curtis. And he walks into the bathroom. And as he walks in, Johnny Curtis is walking out of the stall. And he has some trash in his hands. He throws it on the floor. And Bateman's like, the garbage is over there. And so he's about to leave. And then Curtis says, "Wait, I got a bone to pick with you." And then EC3 is like, "Are you sick or something?" And Curtis is like, "Yeah." This is like intentionally awkward. It was Johnny Curtis's thing.
So intentionally awkward was his
speech was like the delivery of all this was like purposely awkward. And
it sounded like, from my point of view, it seemed like both dudes were trying to make each other laugh.
Yes.
It was like when we used to do our old college movies. Like it was like, let's just goof around. It seemed completely improv.
It did. And I mean, especially Johnny Curtis, I thought was actually pretty funny. So he goes, "Yeah, I am sick. I'm sick of being around you for another week." And he says, what the heck? He says, Bateman he's trying to be funny. That Curtis trying to be funny all the time. When he was in the bathroom earlier, I was feeling sad and nervous. This is back to Curtis now, because I thought, what I'm going to do to you this next week.
Because they're main eventing NXT next week.
Yeah. Bateman says, "Yeah, you should be sad. You should be scared about what I'm going to do you next week."
Yeah.
And then, so they're outside the bathroom at this point.
Yeah.
And Curtis goes, Stay out of there. Referring to the bathroom.
Because he calls it his office.
Yeah, EC3 says, it's a public forum.
It's a public forum.
And you didn't wash your hands. And so Curtis goes up to Bateman and wipes his hands on his shirt and says, they're already clean.
And Bateman just laughs. And he says, what's your problem or something like that. It seemed like they did this in one take.
Yeah.
Because like you can hear the crowd roaring. So clearly this was actually near a public restroom in the concourse of whatever arena they were at, because they were still doing the main event version of NXT. And I just got the feeling that these dudes, I know they were in the intro and everything, and maybe there was the feeling that they would move on into this NXT developmental, but I don't remember them being there that much. Like, it's not like either of them were champions or anything.
Yeah.
And and I forget why. I know Derek Bateman obviously got released. He became EC3 and a pretty big deal in Impact. And then Johnny Curtis probably got the call up shortly after this to main roster as Fandango.
It was the following WrestleMania, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. So less than a year later.
I think so.
Because this was June
of 2012. Yeah. So because it was Mania 28.
It had to have been the next one.
Because
otherwise, what would he have been doing the whole time?
I think it was 29 that he got called up. Yeah, it was 29. So it was the following year.
Okay.
20.
Okay.
It was 20. Oh, it was 2013. Okay, 29 was 2013.
Okay,
that
was
a New York WrestleMania.
Okay, that makes sense. So somebody mentioned this earlier. Okay, yeah, the guy that I mentioned earlier who was like wearing the denim.
Yeah.
That's Vader's son.
Oh,
he went by Jake Carter in NXT.
Yeah.
I don't know whatever happened to him. I have his Wikipedia entry right here. I kind of wish that we had like decided to do a couple of these episodes, because like I kind of want to see like how some of these I can still do it.
Where are they now situation.
It is, and I know Cultaholic did like a big old where are they now.
Yeah, they took the picture, like the first class of NXT.
Yeah.
And went and said who everybody was and what they were up to.
So here we go. It says on the September 12th episode of NXT. Oh, so Carter lasted there until late 2013. So he was there for over a year.
Did he make any appearances on the main roster? Because I remember that name.
Not according to this, but I guess it's possible that he did. He was a tag team champion with Corey Graves. I think they were going to put those guys together. Oh, that's funny. It says Carter returned to NXT on May 30th at 2013, where him and Brandon Traven faced Garrett Dillon. Do you know who Garrett Dillon is? Chris Christopherson's son.
Oh, yeah. Jody, right?
What's that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And Garrett Dillon had tagged with Scott Dawson, and they had lost. But then he lost against Xavier Woods in September, and then he lost against Lord Tensai, and that was it for him.
Wow.
I don't know whatever happened to him.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, I know he shows up on his dad's Twitter from time to time talking about Vader. I'm assuming that's him.
Yeah. So after that, we had our main event. It was Michael McGillicuddy, Curtis Axel, taking on Tyson Kidd.
Now, Tyson Kidd was already on main roster for like a couple of years at that point, I think.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Because I think he debuted in 2010. And then McGillicuddy, I'm trying to remember.
He was
part of Nexus. He had already been, he was already part of all that stuff. And then they sent him back down to NXT, Yeah. This was a long main event.
Yeah.
This was like 25 minutes. Short. Yeah. I was kind of surprised. It was like, oh, the main event's coming up next. And I was like, what? You got half an hour left in this show. What's going on right now?
Yeah.
And it was long.
It was all about you had two guys.
Yeah, it was a good match.
Really good workers. And it was fun seeing McGillicuddy take aspects of his dad's work. There's that spot where he's holding on to the rope and Tyson Kidd kicks him in the leg, and he does basically the full flip like his dad used to do.
Yeah. They were really playing that up. They were really playing up his heritage, yeah.
So Tyson Kidd eventually gets the win here after McGillicuddy's looking for a perfect plex. Tyson headers that into a roll-up, gets a 2, and then puts on the dungeon lock. McGillicuddy taps out. But it was a solid bout, and it's interesting seeing the mix of, FCW talents and main roster talents kind of merging here in NXT to try to elevate. And I was listening to before we started a little bit of an episode of JR's podcast about W Developmental, and he didn't.
Oh my.
Yeah, I didn't really hear him talk much about NXT specifically. But he did talk. This part I listened to, he's talking about how, like after OVW stopped being W Developmental. I know OVW still exists.
Yeah,
and like they really didn't have a developmental system for a little bit.
That's crazy.
And then then it started again because Vince didn't think they were getting main roster talent from the independent ranks.
Yeah,
and so they started FCW. And
so FCW was a WWE creation?
I believe so. Yeah,
that's interesting. That's interesting.
It was in a warehouse in Tampa. That's where they were doing the training then.
Huh. I wonder why they didn't stick with FCW and instead just sort of pivoted NXT, maybe because it was a known brand already. It is a cooler name. NXT is a cooler name, even though it doesn't actually stand for anything.
Yeah, I know.
It's just...
So FCW was a wrestling promotion.
Well, back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, so the promotion served as official developmental territory of WWE from October 2007 to August 2012. And then they rebranded FCW into NXT.
But FCW wasn't the original NWA FCW.
I don't believe so, no.
Those were two different things. I'm wondering who started like the FCW that eventually became NXT.
Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
Also, the promotion did start. Steve Keirn started in 2007 and became WWE's second developmental territory.
Oh, okay.
Along with Deep South Wrestling.
Yeah, we know that, yeah. That's where Kenny was.
Yep.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. The feeder system.
Yep.
Anyways, thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. Chat and all that. Live viewers, stick around. We'll raid somebody and say goodbye. Till next time, we'll talk to you later.
Goodbye.